Well, greetings and welcome to this re-recorded session of Beyond the Gradebook using Brightspace tools to track student engagement and progress. There was a problem with the original recording, so we are making a second attempt here with just Mark Chamberlain, myself. In the original recording, the session was led by Dr. Nicola Weyer, Director of Instructional Design and Training, along with myself, Senior Performance Support Specialist at T&E campus. We do want to ask you to keep using your gradebook, but we also want you to consider other data sources to improve your course and to guide how you provide support to your students. You can do some serious number crunching with these tools, but there's so much you can learn to do on the fly. So why not just stick with the gradebook? For one, the gradebook is very complicated. There can be many columns and rows. These tools that we're going to look at today can give you a quick glance at information that's easy to compare, such as logins and overall grades in various topics. There's a lot you can see very clearly. But the gradebook is a great resource. We just want to consider a little more of a focus on what you can see in these tools versus the many columns of information in a gradebook. We think it'll help you get right to the information that will help you spot the students that need extra support or maybe aren't logging into their course or some other issue. So today we'll be looking at class progress and course content statistics. Now, class progress is probably more familiar to you. From the nav bar, you'll see class progress in T&E campus instances of D2L Brightspace. If you're using another Brightspace account, your nav bar may be different, but this is one that you'll likely see. Ours is also right next to class list. Probably recall that that's a great place to start messages and emails and that sort of thing, and also to impersonate students. But class progress is a good way to learn more about students and how they're progressing. So what is it? Well, class progress provides a snapshot view of all students. In this particular example, we're looking at content visited, objectives, login history, grades, and there can be more. It only shows 4 at a time, but you also have the ability to customize that, and we'll look at that in the next slide. But I also just want to note that there are graphical representations as well as numerical ones, so there's different ways of looking at this information. To make that customization, we would go right up here to the settings, and in the next slide you would see the 4 items that you have currently of what their graphical and numerical instances look like, and also a nice summary of what they are in case there's any confusion. Most are pretty straightforward, but it's handy. Checking one of these menu arrows will open up options to either move up or down the list or to replace. And if you, let's say, like with learning objectives, they're not widely used in T&E campus courses, so if that's not helpful to you, you could choose to replace. And when you choose replace, then all of the options become available for something else. So, and whatever you click on, that's what will be in the snapshot view that we were looking at previously. So why is that a big deal? Or why is it important for us to have this information? Well, you can see this first student, and by the way, there would be student names over here, has completed 96% of the content, 220 out of 230 content pages, has logged in 57 times, and judging by the blue scores, has at least made good passing grades. One a little bit questionable, but at least no failing grades. And we kind of see a similar trend here with the next one. But when you get down to our third student, who's only accessed 32% of the content in the same time frame, 74 pages out of 230, and many red blocks here. By the way, when you mouse over something, whatever you're pointing at will give you a quick summary of what it is, and in this case, scores that person earned. You also could do the same thing with logins. You could see which date this login was, this login, etc. And there are the 15 logins, which substantially less activity and substantially lower grades. So anytime I think you can draw a quick connection, you might be able to flag somebody that needs some help or needs some motivation or just some other resource. That's what you can do with this data at a glance. Another good feature, if you're using groups in your Brightspace, then you can actually take a look at people or take a look at that data within those groups. It's normally set by default to all users, But if you have groups, then you could look at case studies or blue team, green team, whatever, however you've got to break it up and be able to compare everyone in that group. Now, this is actually an individual we've selected, and here on the left, you can look at a summary, which would be much like the page that we were looking at previously, or you can just look at grades or objectives or contents right on down the list here. And when you select something like quizzes, then it's going to break out all of the quiz or graded material. And of course, again, 9 out of 10, dates, and so on. But another interesting feature is that if you click on details and just turn this little arrow down, then you get a pop-up that shows more detail about when their first submission was, when their second, and their 2 out of 5 or 5 out of 5 score. Now that's class progress. Of course, content statistics is similar, but not quite as easy to find. In fact, this is one you might not have even realized was there unless you were on the table of contents within the course. You chose the menu for related tools, and then you clicked on View Reports. View Reports basically is the content statistics, and let's look at that. Of course, content statistics can provide information specifically to users. It can look specifically at content. We'll get into that in just a moment. In this view, we're seeing the content topics available and the content topics visited. So that's kind of similar to what we saw in class progress, but it's laid out a little differently. So for all these users, we see one here that, of course, has only visited one of the topics, while another's visited 171. So a similar situation. When you see things that are going to flag a problem, then this is a student we might want to investigate a little deeper and try to understand what's happening. And in another view of this, you'll see average time spent. So here we have Chapter 2, and we've got all these lecture notes, the OpenStax resource here. We see that this is available to 10 people, 9 of which have viewed this, 7, 8, 6, 6. We also see the time, 10 minutes, 22 minutes, 6 minutes, 24 minutes. So they've spent some average time on here that they've really gotten involved in it. But when we look down here at additional resources, these haven't had near the time or attention. In fact, far fewer people have even looked at these resources, and some of them have only spent seconds or just a couple of minutes on these. When you're looking at your class, if there seem to be some real discrepancies on their progress, that they're not doing so well in the grades, and you look back and you see resources that aren't being utilized, maybe it's something that we need to bring to their attention. Maybe it's something is not easy to access, or maybe they just need some motivation to find this stuff and spend a little more time on it. You're working with students. This is information that can guide you to spend more time on it yourself, to make it more interesting, or maybe it's just information that's not being as helpful as you might have thought it could be. So if you're a course developer, maybe it's time to change these resources, or maybe it's time to change how it's accessed, or something that will make it more useful. And speaking of course development, another great feature, content statistics, is the ability to export to a spreadsheet. Now, we don't have that view in class progress, but we do here. And now this certainly can be useful to the classroom teacher within their section. The reports that are in there are very good. You can see a lot of information. You don't have to, you can customize to some extent, but you really don't need to change much to learn much. But when you're ready to start exporting data, you may be looking at either multiple sections, and you want to kind of compare how they're doing from one group to another, or multiple semesters. Again, if you're a course developer and you're seeing a trend that certain resources aren't getting used, or students typically have low grades in a certain module or quiz or something like that, then maybe there's something that needs to be addressed there to make it more useful or to be more consistent as it is with the rest of the course. So exporting to a spreadsheet will give you even more flexibility than we've already shown. And you can have, of course, actually over 1 million lines of rows here. So however much data you can throw at it, especially if you're building an Excel spreadsheet, that's where I get that number. You can put a lot of information in there and then go back and really crunch and grind through that to find what you need. But again, I really like the baked-in reports. They're quite good, and really just at a glance you're going to see. Now, one of the questions that came up, and let's go ahead and kind of address that, was, is there a way to know the difference between a page that was viewed and possibly printed or exported through Ally's alternate formats, that may have been viewed offline or even on paper? And we don't. I don't know of any way to prevent that or to change that. In fact, I do know that if a page times out because someone just walks away from their computer, that information does not get folded into the averages. But on the other hand, neither would be where someone just looks at the page or clicks on it, maybe prints it or gets in a phone conversation and then comes back and looks at it. It's not perfect in that sense, but the trend information you can see consistently, people that aren't logging in, consistently pages that aren't being viewed, or consistently low time spent that also translate to low grades in the gradebook, you can be pretty well assured that this information is helpful that way. But as far as like time clocking some exact use of it, it's not going to be helpful in that sense. Hopefully you've seen a lot of things that are similar here. They both get into content and average time spent. You can explore specific data on students. You can look at specific content within the course. And I think both of these are going to be helpful to anyone improving the course, whether that's just kind of keeping a flow of what's happening in this particular section right now, or someone that's looking at how things are going across sections or across semesters. But there are some differences, and the course statistics do offer that spreadsheet. And course progress also tracks. It goes not only into grades and objectives, but surveys and much more, as we looked at earlier. So if you want to look at checklists and different things like that, you can go farther there. I think both of them cover the real meat and potatoes stuff that you're going to want to know. So I think both are really good and useful. Maybe the biggest difference is being able to utilize that spreadsheet feature, or maybe you just like the way it's laid out and it's easy for you to read and view. But they're both good choices. And all that leads us to the fact that you probably discovered in your course a little button on the course page called Report It Now. This is a way to let the student success team know that there's someone that is not engaged or performing poorly. You probably already reached out to them and maybe weren't able to connect or are having difficulty getting them on track. Letting our student success team know that there's a student that needs help. If you've utilized these tools and you've tried to get this person in good standing and still having trouble, Report It Now is a great feature. And our last slide is for questions. So if you do want to reach out and ask questions, we'd be glad to assist. But hopefully you've gotten a good overview of how this works. Thank you.